the React framework for the web. What is next.js? Next.js is a React framework for building full-stack web applications. You use React components to build user interfaces, and next.js for additional features and optimizations. Under the hood, next.js also abstracts and automatically configures tooling needed for React, like bundling, compiling, and more. This allows you to focus on building your application instead of spending time with configuration. Whether you're an individual developer or part of a larger team, next.js can help you build interactive, dynamic, and fast React applications. Main features. Some of the main next.js features include: feature description, routing, a file system-based router built on top of server components that supports layouts, nested routing, loading states, error handling, and more. Rendering, client-side and server-side rendering with client and server components. Further optimized with static and dynamic rendering on the server with next.js. Streaming on Edge and Node.js runtimes. Data fetching, simplified data fetching with async/await in server components, and an extended fetch API for request memoization, data caching and revalidation. Styling, support for your preferred styling methods, including CSS modules, Tailwind CSS, and CSS in JS optimizations, image, fonts, and script optimizations to improve your application's core web vitals and user experience. TypeScript, improved support for TypeScript, with better type checking and more efficient compilation, as well as custom TypeScript plugin and type checker. To get started, check out the installation guide. Installation system requirements: Node.js 18.18 or later. Mac OS, Windows, including WSL, and Linux are supported. On installation, you'll see the following prompts: terminal, what is your project named? My app, would you like to use TypeScript? No/yes, would you like to use ESLint? No/yes, would you like to use Tailwind CSS? No/yes, would you like your code inside a src/directory? No/yes, would you like to use App Router? Recommended. No/yes, would you like to use Turbo Pack for Next.dev? No/yes, would you like to customize the import alias @ by default? No/yes, what import alias would you like confi? After the prompts, Create Next App will create a folder with your project name and install the required dependencies. Next.js now ships with TypeScript, ESLint, and Tailwind CSS configuration by default. You can optionally use a src directory in the root of your project to separate your application's code from configuration files. App Router vs Pages Router. Next.js has two different routers, the App Router and the Pages Router. The App Router is a newer router that allows you to use React's latest features, such as server components and streaming. The Pages Router is the original Next.js router, which allowed you to build server-rendered React applications and continues to be supported for older Next.js applications. Prerequisite knowledge. Although our docs are designed to be beginner-friendly, we need to establish a baseline so that the docs can stay focused on Next.js functionality. We'll make sure to provide links to relevant documentation whenever we introduce a new concept. To get the most out of our docs, it's recommended that you have a basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and React. If you need to brush up on your React skills, check out our React Foundations course, which will introduce you to the fundamentals. Then, learn more about Next.js by building a dashboard application. Run the development server. Run npm run dev to start the development server. Visit http URL. To view your application. Edit app/page.tsx, or pages/index.tsx, file and save it to see the updated result in your browser. Next.js project structure. This page provides an overview of the project structure of a next.js application. It covers top-level files and folders, configuration files, and routing conventions within the app and pages directories. Click the file and folder names to learn more about each convention. App routing conventions. The following file conventions are used to define routes and handle metadata in the app router. Start building with next.js. Go from beginner to expert by learning the foundations of next.js and building a fully functional demo website that uses all the latest features. Exploring the project. Unlike tutorials that have you write code from scratch, much of the code for this course is already written for you. This better reflects real-world development, where you'll likely be working with existing code bases. Our goal is to help you focus on learning the main features of next.js, without having to write all the application code. After installation, open the project in your code editor and navigate to Next.js dashboard. Folder structure. You'll notice that the project has the following folder structure. /app contains all the roots, components, and logic for your application. This is where you'll be mostly working from. /app/lib contains functions used in your application, such as reusable utility functions and data fetching functions. /app/UI contains all the UI components for your application, such as cards, tables, and forms. To save time, we pre-styled these components for you. /public contains all the static assets for your application, such as images, config files, You'll also notice config files such as next.config.js at the root of your application. Most of these files are created and pre-configured when you start a new project using Create Next app. You will not need to modify them in this course. Feel free to explore these folders, and don't worry if you don't understand everything the code is doing yet. Placeholder data. When you're building user interfaces, it helps to have some placeholder data. If a database or API is not yet available, you can use placeholder data in JSON format or as JavaScript objects. Use a third-party service like Mock API. For this project, we provided some placeholder data in app/lib/placeholderdata.ts. Each JavaScript object in the file represents a table in your database. For example, for the invoices table, TypeScript. You may also notice most files have a .ts or .tsx suffix. This is because the project is written in TypeScript. We wanted to create a course that reflects the modern web landscape. It's okay if you don't know TypeScript, we'll provide the TypeScript code snippets when required. For now, take a look at the /app/lib/definitions.ts file. Here, we manually define the types that will be returned from the database. For example, the invoices table has the following types. npm dev starts your next.js development server on port 3000. Let's check to see if it's working. Open HTTP URL. On your browser. Your home page should look like this, which is intentionally unstyled. CSS styling. Currently, your home page doesn't have any styles. Let's look at the different ways you can style your next.js application. Global styles. If you look inside the /app/UI folder, you'll see a file called global.css. You can use this file to add CSS rules to all the roots in your application, such as CSS reset rules, site-wide styles for HTML elements like links, and more. You can import global.css in any component in your application, but it's usually good practice to add it to your top-level component. In next.js, this is the root layout, more on this later. Add global styles to your application by navigating to /app/layout.tsx and importing the global.css file. With the development server still running, save your changes and preview them in the browser. Your home page should now look like this. But wait a second, you didn't add any CSS rules. Where did the styles come from? If you take a look inside global.css, you'll notice some @tailwind directives. Tailwind is a CSS framework that speeds up the development process by allowing you to quickly write utility classes directly in your TSX markup. In Tailwind, you style elements by adding class names. For example, adding the class TextBlue 500 will turn the h1 TextBlue, h1 class name equals TextBlue 500 I'm blue. /h1 Although the CSS styles are shared globally, each class is singularly applied to each element. This means if you add or delete an element, you don't have to worry about maintaining separate style sheets, style collisions, or the size of your CSS bundle growing as your application scales. When you use Create Next app to start a new project, next.js will ask if you want to use Tailwind. If you select yes, next.js will automatically install the necessary packages and configure Tailwind in your application. If you look at /app/page.tsx, you'll see that we're using Tailwind classes in the example. Don't worry if this is your first time using Tailwind. To save time, we've already styled all the components you'll be using. Let's play with Tailwind. Copy the code below and paste it above the p element in /app/page.tsx. It's time to take a quiz. Test your knowledge and see what you've just learned. What shape do you see when using the code snippet above? If you prefer writing traditional CSS rules or keeping your styles separate from your JSX, CSS modules are a great alternative. CSS modules allow you to scope CSS to a component by automatically creating unique class names, so you don't have to worry about style collisions as well. We'll continue using Tailwind in this course, but let's take a moment to see how you can achieve the same results from the quiz above using CSS modules. Inside /app/UI, create a new file called home.module.css and add the following CSS rules. Then, inside your /app/page.tsx file import the styles and replace the Tailwind class names from the div you've added with styles.shape. Save your changes and preview them in the browser. You should see the same shape as before. Tailwind and CSS modules are the two most common ways of styling next.js applications. Whether you use one or the other is a matter of preference. You can even use both in the same application. It's time to take a quiz. Test your knowledge and see what you've just learned. What is one benefit of using CSS modules? Provide a way to make CSS classes locally scoped to components by default, reducing the risk of styling conflicts. Using the CLSX library to toggle class names. There may be cases where you may need to conditionally style an element based on state or some other condition. CLSX is a library that lets you toggle class names easily. We recommend taking a look at documentation for more details, but here's the basic usage. Suppose that you want to create an invoice status component which accepts status. The status can be pending or paid. If it's paid, you want the color to be green. If it's pending, you want the color to be gray. You can use CLSX to conditionally apply the classes, like this. It's time to take a quiz. Test your knowledge and see what you've just learned. Search for CLSX in your code editor. What components use it to conditionally apply class names? The status.tsx and pagination.tsx components use CLSX to conditionally apply class names. You've completed Chapter 2. Well done. You've learned about the different ways of styling a next.js application. Next up 3, optimizing fonts and images. Continue working on your home page by adding a hero image and a custom font. Optimizing fonts and images. In the previous chapter, you learned how to style your next.js application. Let's continue working on your home page by adding a custom font and a hero image. Why optimize fonts? Fonts play a significant role in the design of a website, but using custom fonts in your project can affect performance if the font files need to be fetched and loaded. Cumulative layout shift is a metric used by Google to evaluate the performance and user experience of a website. With fonts, layout shift happens when the browser initially renders text in a fallback or system font and then swaps it out for a custom font once it has loaded. This swap can cause the text size, spacing, or layout to change, shifting elements around it. Next.js automatically optimizes fonts in the application when you use the next/font module. It downloads font files at build time and hosts them with your other static assets. This means when a user visits your application, there are no additional network requests for fonts which would impact performance. It's time to take a quiz. Test your knowledge and see what you've just learned. Next.js downloads font files at build time and hosts them with your other static assets. This means when a user visits your application, there are no additional network requests for fonts which would impact performance. Let's add a custom Google font to your application to see how this works. In your /app/UI folder, create a new file called fonts.ts. You'll use this file to keep the fonts that will be used throughout your application. Import the inter font from the next/font/Google module. This will be your primary font. Then, specify what subset you'd like to load. In this case, Latin. Finally, add the font to the body element in /app/layout.tsx. By adding inter to the body element, the font will be applied throughout your application. Here, you're also adding the Tailwind anti-aliased class which smooths out the font. It's not necessary to use this class, but it adds a nice touch. Navigate to your browser, open DevTools and select the body element. You should see inter and inter_fallback are now applied under styles. Practice. Adding a secondary font. You can also add fonts to specific elements of your application. Now it's your turn. In your fonts.ts file, import a secondary font called Lusitana and pass it to the p element in your /app/page.tsx file. In addition to specifying a subset like you did before, you'll also need to specify the font weight. Once you're ready, expand the code snippet below to see the solution. Finally, the Acme logo/component also uses Lusitana. It was commented out to prevent errors. You can now uncomment it. Great, you've added 2 custom fonts to your application. Next, let's add a hero image to the home page. Next.js can serve static assets, like images, under the top-level /public folder. Files inside /public can be referenced in your application. With regular HTML, you would add an image as follows. However, this means you have to manually ensure your image is responsive on different screen sizes. Specify image sizes for different devices. Prevent layout shift as the images load. Lazy load images that are outside the user's viewport. Image optimization is a large topic in web development that could be considered a specialization in itself. Instead of manually implementing these optimizations, you can use the next/image component to automatically optimize your images. The image component is an extension of the HTML img tag, and comes with automatic image optimization, such as preventing layout shift automatically when images are loading. Resizing images to avoid shipping large images to devices with a smaller viewport. Lazy loading images by default. Images load as they enter the viewport. Serving images in modern formats like WebP and AVIF when the browser supports it. Let's use the image component. If you look inside the /public folder, you'll see there are 2 images, hero-desktop.png and hero-mobile.png. These 2 images are completely different, and they'll be shown depending if the user's device is a desktop or mobile. In your /app/page.tsx file, import the component from next/image. Then, add the image under the comment. Now it's your turn. Under the image you've just added, add another image component for HeroMobile.png. The image should have a width of 560 and height of 620 pixels. It should be shown on mobile screens, and hidden on desktop. You can use DevTools to check if the desktop and mobile images are swapped correctly. Once you're ready, expand the code snippet below to see the solution. Great. Your home page now has a custom font and hero images. It's time to take a quiz. Test your knowledge and see what you've just learned. True or false, images without dimensions and web fonts are common causes of layout shift. Images without dimensions and web fonts are common causes of layout shift due to the browser having to download additional resources. So far, your application only has a home page. Let's learn how you can create more routes with layouts and pages. In this chapter, Here are the topics we'll cover. Create the dashboard routes using file system routing. Understand the role of folders and files when creating new route segments. Create a nested layout that can be shared between multiple dashboard pages. Understand what co-location, partial rendering, and the route layout are. Next.js uses file system routing where folders are used to create nested routes. Each folder represents a route segment that maps to a URL segment. You can create separate UIs for each route using layout.tsx and page.tsx files. Page.tsx is a special next.js file that exports a React component, and it's required for the route to be accessible. In your application, you already have a page file, /app/page.tsx, this is the home page associated with the route /. To create a nested route, you can nest folders inside each other and add page.tsx files inside them. For example, /app/dashboard/page.tsx is associated with the /dashboard path. Let's create the page to see how it works. Create a new folder called dashboard inside /app. Then, create a new page.tsx file inside the dashboard folder with the following content. Now, make sure that the development server is running and visit HTTP URL. You should see the dashboard page text. This is how you can create different pages in next.js, create a new route segment using a folder, and add a page file inside it. By having a special name for page files, next.js allows you to co-locate UI components, test files, and other related code with your routes. Only the content inside the page file will be publicly accessible. For example, the /UI and /lib folders are co-located inside the /app folder along with your routes. Let's practice creating more routes. In your dashboard, create 2 more pages. Customers page, the page should be accessible on HTTP URL. For now, it should return AP customers page /p element. Invoices page, the invoices page should be accessible on HTTP URL. For now, also return AP invoices page /p element. Spend some time tackling this exercise, and when you're ready, expand the toggle below for the solution. Dashboards have some sort of navigation that is shared across multiple pages. In next.js, you can use a special layout.tsx file to create UI that is shared between multiple pages. Let's create a layout for the dashboard pages. Inside the /dashboard folder, add a new file called layout.tsx and paste the following code. A few things are going on in this code, so let's break it down. First, you're importing the side nav/component into your layout. Any components you import into this file will be part of the layout. The layout/component receives a children prop. This child can either be a page or another layout. In your case, the pages inside /dashboard will automatically be nested inside a layout/ like so. Check that everything is working correctly by saving your changes and checking your local host. You should see the following. One benefit of using layouts in next.js is that on navigation, only the page components update while the layout won't re-render. This is called partial rendering. In Chapter 3, you imported the interfont into another layout, /app/layout.tsx. As a reminder, this is called a root layout and is required. Any UI you add to the root layout will be shared across all pages in your application. You can use the root layout to modify your HTML and body tags, and add metadata. You'll learn more about metadata in a later chapter. Since the new layout you've just created, /app/dashboard/layout.tsx, is unique to the dashboard pages, you don't need to add any UI to the root layout above. It's time to take a quiz. Test your knowledge and see what you've just learned. What is the purpose of the layout file in next.js? That's right, the layout file is the best way to create a shared layout that all pages in your application can use. In the previous chapter, you created the dashboard layout and pages. Now, let's add some links to allow users to navigate between the dashboard routes. In this chapter, here are the topics we'll cover: how to use the next/link component, how to show an active link with the use path name, hook, how navigation works in next.js. To link between pages, you'd traditionally use the HTML element. At the moment, the sidebar links use elements, but notice what happens when you navigate between the home, invoices, and customers pages on your browser. Did you see it? There's a full page refresh on each page navigation. In next.js, you can use the link/component to link between pages in your application. Link allows you to do client-side navigation with JavaScript. To use the link/component, open /app/ui/dashboard/navlinks.tsx, and import the link component from next/link. Then, replace the tag with link. As you can see, the link component is similar to using a tags, but instead of a href equals, you use link href equals. Save your changes and check to see if it works in your local host. You should now be able to navigate between the pages without seeing a full refresh. Although parts of your application are rendered on the server, there's no full page refresh, making it feel like a web app. Why is that? To improve the navigation experience, next.js automatically code splits your application by route segments. This is different from a traditional React SPA, where the browser loads all your application code on initial load. Splitting code by routes means that pages become isolated. If a certain page throws an error, the rest of the application will still work. Furthermore, in production, whenever link components appear in the browser's viewport, next.js automatically prefetches the code for the linked route in the background. By the time the user clicks the link, the code for the destination page will already be loaded in the background, and this is what makes the page transition near instant. It's time to take a quiz. Test your knowledge and see what you've just learned. What does next.js do when a link component appears in the browser's viewport in a production environment? Next.js automatically prefetches the code for the linked route in the background. By the time the user clicks the link, the code for the destination page will already be loaded in the background, and this is what makes the page transition near instant. A common UI pattern is to show an active link to indicate to the user what page they are currently on. To do this, you need to get the user's current path from the URL. Next.js provides a hook called usePathName that you can use to check the path and implement this pattern. Since usePathName is a hook, you'll need to turn navlinks.tsx into a client component. Add React's useClient directive to the top of the file, then import usePathName from next/navigation. Next, assign the path to a variable called pathname inside your nav-link/component. You can use the CLSX library introduced in the chapter on CSS styling to conditionally apply class names when the link is active. When link.href matches the path name, the link should be displayed with blue text and a light blue background. Here's the final code for navlinks.tsx. Save and check your local host. You should now see the active link highlighted in blue.